Hello? Welcome to another video on our channel. Here we translate testimonies from people who have had near-death experiences and other spiritual experiences. Today we will learn the story of Nathaniel Rivers. He says that he died and had a surprising revelation about July 20th, 2024. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now, leave a comment with your name and city. Now let's listen to Nathaniel's testimony. My name is Nathaniel Rivers, but I prefer to be called Nate. I'm 38 years old and live in Portland, Oregon. Today I'm going to share an experience that happened to me 2 years ago, and that changed my life forever. It was such a surreal experience that, for a long time, I thought I was going crazy. And maybe you think so too, but I ask that you give me a chance to tell my story. I am a skeptical man by nature. I always needed to see it to believe it. I work as a project manager at a technology company, and my life followed a predictable and rational path until the day of the accident. But before I talk about what happened that day, let me tell you a little more about the important people in my life and the places that are part of it. Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Sarah is the chief surgeon who took care of me after the accident. She is 45 years old and is a dedicated and empathetic professional. Since the accident, Sarah and I have developed a deep friendship. She is one of the few people who knows the full extent of my story and has been a great source of support. Sarah is practical and scientifically oriented, but even she began to reflect more on spiritual issues after hearing my story. Jack Rivers. Jack is my older brother. He is 42 years old and works as a lawyer. Jack has always been a pillar of rationality in our family, skeptical as I was before the accident. He has supported me unconditionally throughout my recovery, but he still struggles to accept what happened to me. Our relationship has strengthened over the past 2 years, and your skeptical questions have helped me reflect more deeply on my experience. Lily Rivers. Lily is my daughter, a 10-year-old girl with a spirited and sensitive soul. Since the accident, it seems like she has developed an even stronger connection to me and the world around us. Lily is curious and intuitive, often surprising me with profound questions and observations that seem beyond her years. Portland, Oregon is the place I call home. It is a city known for its exuberant nature and vibrant culture. My mornings start with a run through Forest Park, a vast urban park where I find some peace and clarity. In the city center, the cafes and bookstores are my refuges, where I like to spend time reflecting on everything that has happened. My home, a modest townhouse in a quiet Portland neighborhood, became a place of safety and reflection. This is where I try to get back into my routine and find normality in my life. However, it is also where I prepare myself mentally and spiritually for what is to come. My living room, with its walls covered in books and family photos, is my personal sanctuary. Today is July 16th, and although I'm nervous, I'm also anxious. The date the spirit guides mentioned, July 20th, 2024, is quickly approaching. I spent these 2 years trying to understand what this means and how I should prepare. My thoughts often return to that day of the accident, to the words I heard and the visions I saw. I know my life is about to change in ways I can't yet fully understand. Sarah told me once, while adjusting the stitches in my head, that recovery is as much mental as it is physical. "You're going to be fine, Nate," she said with an encouraging smile, "but you have to believe it." And I believed. Jack, with his usual skepticism, challenged me to prove what I saw and felt. "Nate, if this is real, we need more than just feelings. We need proof." And so, between Sarah's faith and Jack's reason, I began rebuilding my life. Lily, in her childlike innocence, seems to understand something we are all still trying to understand. "Daddy, I know you saw something special," she told me one night as I put her to sleep. "I think this is just the beginning. And here I am, waiting for something I've been told will happen, something that will change everything. This is my story, a story of belief, skepticism, and hope. A story that begins with an ordinary man on an ordinary morning who had an extraordinary experience. It was a typical summer morning in Portland on July 16th, and the sun was shining in the cloudless sky. I was on my way to work, driving my car along busy Burnside Avenue. He was more worried than usual, thinking about the important meeting he had later that day. The promotion I so desired depended on her, and my mind was racing a mile a minute. The traffic was heavy, as always. Cars honked impatiently, cyclists weaved between lanes, and pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks. When the traffic light in front of me turned red, I stopped the car and took the opportunity to mentally review the main points I should address in the meeting. It was then that everything changed. In a matter of seconds, I heard the deafening sound of skidding tires and, before I could react, I felt a violent impact on the side of my car. A black SUV at high speed had run a red light and collided directly with me. The impact was brutal. I felt my body being thrown against the seatbelt. My head hit the steering wheel hard and a sharp pain spread throughout my body. Suddenly, everything was silent. The sound of cars, horns, even my own breathing disappeared. I felt a strange weightlessness and somehow found myself floating above the scene of the accident. I looked down and saw my own body trapped in the wreckage of the car. My face was bloody, my eyes were closed, and the car was completely destroyed. I remember feeling a mixture of confusion and peace. There was no pain, just a feeling of being disconnected from my physical body. As I floated, I saw people crowding around the car, some trying to help, others calling 911. I saw the look of panic on the face of a man who rushed to check my pulse, and the worry on the face of a woman who was just a few feet away, holding her cell phone and shaking hands. "Someone, call an ambulance!" shouted the man, his voice thick with urgency. "He's bleeding a lot," the woman said, her voice cracking with fear. As I watched the scene from above, my mind tried to process what was happening. How could I be seeing all this? Would he be dead? My mind was flooded with a flood of thoughts and questions. Time seemed to pass strangely, as if each second was dragging on. I saw the red and blue lights of the approaching ambulance, heard the distant sound of sirens, and watched the paramedics arrive quickly, pushing through the crowd. "We need to get him out of here carefully," one of the paramedics said, with a determined expression. "He's really hurt." I saw my body being carefully removed from the car. Each movement of the paramedics was precise and full of care. They put an oxygen mask on my face, splinted my neck, and placed me on a stretcher. I could hear fragments of their technical conversations, words that now seemed distant and unreal to me. Meanwhile, my consciousness continued to float above the scene. I felt a mixture of despair and resignation. I wanted to scream, to tell everyone that I was okay, but I couldn't make a sound. It was like I was stuck between two worlds, unable to interact with either of them. "Let's take you to the nearest hospital," the paramedic said as he closed the ambulance doors. "Every second counts." I watched as the ambulance quickly drove away, and then suddenly I was pulled by an invisible force as if I was being sucked away from the scene. Everything around me began to fade, and the next thing I knew was a tunnel of bright light swallowing me. The tunnel of light was something I had never imagined before. It was bright but not blinding, and I found myself inexplicably drawn to it. As I moved through the tunnel, a feeling of deep peace and tranquility enveloped me. It was as if all the worries and pains of my physical body were left behind. Upon emerging on the other side, I found myself in a large round hall of white marble. The place was vast and impressive, with a tall, luminous dome that seemed to radiate a soft, welcoming light. The floor was made of pure white marble, so polished that it reflected the light in an almost ethereal way. The walls, also made of marble, were decorated with intricate golden patterns that seemed to tell ancient stories. In the center of the hall, 5 figures of light were gathered. Each of them emanated an aura of wisdom and serenity. They didn't have defined faces, but their presence was undeniably comforting. One of them, who seemed to be the leader, stepped forward and, without moving her mouth, spoke directly to my mind. "Welcome, Nathaniel," the figure said in a calm, deep voice. "You are in a place between the world of the living and the afterlife. We are your spirit guides." I felt completely amazed and at the same time curious. "What's happening? Am I dead?" I asked, my voice echoing in the vast hall. "No, you are not dead," the figure replied, "but you are in a state very close to death. We have something important to show you." Before I could ask another question, the figure raised a glowing hand and a portal opened in the air. On the other side, I saw an image that made my heart stop. It was my own funeral. I saw my body in a coffin, surrounded by friends and family. The scene was painfully real. My mother was there, crying silently, her face marked with pain. My brother Jack was by her side, holding her hand and trying to be strong. Sarah, my surgeon friend, was present, with an expression of sadness and resignation. And then, I saw Lily, my daughter, standing next to the coffin, holding a white rose. His face was pale, his eyes red from crying. "No, this can't be happening," I muttered, feeling a wave of despair wash over me. "This is what would happen if you didn't come back," the figure said. "But you have a choice. You can see what the future holds, and if you wish, you can return to complete your soul contract." "Soul contract?" I asked, confused. "What does that mean?" "You have a mission to fulfill, Nathaniel," the figure explained. "An important mission that will help not only you, but also the planet. Want to see what's next?" I hesitated for a moment, still trying to process everything, but curiosity and the desire to protect my daughter took over. "Yes, I want to see." The figure nodded, and the portal changed scene. I saw images of the future, scenes of peace and unity, of people from different cultures and nations working together for the greater good. I saw technological and spiritual advances and a sense of hope that permeated everything. "This is the change that will begin on July 20th, 2024, the figure said. "But for that to happen, you must return and fulfill your mission." "How will I know what to do?" I asked, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. "We will be guiding you," the figure replied. "Trust the process and follow your heart. You will know what to do when the time comes." I felt a wave of warmth and comfort envelop my being, and then everything began to fade away. The marble hall, the figures of light, everything began to disappear into a white mist. The last thing I heard was the figure's voice, soft and encouraging. "Come back, Nathaniel. Your mission has just begun." I woke up with a feeling of heaviness in my chest and a searing pain in my head. The first thing I saw was the white ceiling of a hospital room. The fluorescent light seemed brighter than usual, making my eyes water. I blinked a few times, trying to focus, and realized I was surrounded by machines and monitors that were beeping incessantly. "He is waking up!" I heard a female voice exclaim, full of relief and excitement. I slowly turned my head and saw the familiar figure of Sarah Mitchell, the chief surgeon who had become my friend. She was at the bedside, with an expression of concern and hope. "Sarah," I murmured, my voice hoarse and weak. "Yes, Nate, it's me," she replied, holding my hand. "You're in the hospital. You had a serious accident, but you're alive. We thought you wouldn't make it, but you came back." Upon hearing those words, flashes of what I had seen during my near-death experience began to flood my mind. The marble hall, the figures of light, my own funeral. Everything seemed like a distant dream, but the emotions were intensely real. I saw things, Sarah," I started to say, but my voice trailed off. I was exhausted and confused. "I know it must be hard to understand right now," she said softly. "But you're here, and that's what matters. We're going to take care of you and help you recover." The next few days were a blur of medical tests, medications, and attempts at recovery. Every movement was a battle against pain, but the constant presence of Sarah and my family gave me strength. Jack, my brother, was always around, although his skepticism was evident. "Nate, you're very lucky," Jack said on one of his visits. "The doctor said most people don't survive an accident like yours. You're a miracle." "It wasn't luck, Jack," I replied, my voice still weak but determined. "There was something else, something I need to understand." "I know you believe that, Nate," Jack said, trying to be understanding. "But we need to focus on your recovery now. Then we can talk about what happened." Lily, my daughter, was my greatest source of strength. Even though she was only 10 years old, she seemed to understand the depth of what I was going through. When I finally had the strength to hold his hand, I felt a surge of love and determination that drove me to keep fighting. "Daddy, I knew you would come back," Lily said, her eyes shining with tears. "I asked the angels a lot to take care of you." "The angels took care of me, my love," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "And I promise I'll be okay to take care of you." Over the next few months, my recovery was slow but steady. Each day brought a little progress. One more step, one less painful movement. Sarah was always by my side, encouraging me and monitoring my progress. "Nate, you're making incredible progress," she said one day with an encouraging smile. "You are a real fighter." "I couldn't do this without you, Sarah," I replied sincerely, "and without my family." As my body healed, my mind continued to reflect on the near-death experience. The words of the spiritual guides, the visions of the future, everything seemed to point to something bigger that I still couldn't fully understand. "You'll find out what it all means, Nate," Sarah said one night as I adjusted the monitors around me. "I believe you were spared for a reason, and when you are ready, you will know what to do." Finally, after months of recovery, I was cleared to return home. My home, a place that had always represented safety and normalcy, now felt like a new beginning. The living room, with its walls covered in books and family photos, was my sanctuary for reflection and preparation. Returning to the daily routine was not easy. Each simple task was a reminder of my fragility, but also my determination. I knew I had a mission, something important that the spirit guides had mentioned. And with each day that passed, the date of July 20th, 2024 approached, bringing with it the promise of great change. My life was different now. I was different. And as I prepared myself for what was to come, I felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. I knew something big was about to happen, and I was determined to be ready for it. As I recovered and tried to resume my normal life, my thoughts were constantly haunted by the near-death experience. Every detail of that surreal journey made me question the reality and purpose of my existence. As the days passed, the feeling that something big was about to happen only increased. My daily routine began to include long periods of meditation and reflection. I sat in the armchair in the living room, surrounded by photos of my family, trying to make sense of everything I had seen and felt. The spirit guide's words echoed in my mind. "You have a mission to fulfill, Nathaniel." Lily, my daughter, seemed to sense my internal struggle. She would often sit next to me, silently, holding my hand. His presence was an indescribable comfort. "Daddy, are you thinking about angels again?" she asked one day, her big brown eyes full of curiosity and understanding. "Yes, Lily," I replied, squeezing her small hand. "They showed me things I'm still trying to understand." "I think they'll help you find out," she said with the wisdom of someone much older than her 10 years. "You just have to believe." These words from Lily gave me strength in moments of doubt. I needed to believe there was a greater purpose, something that was beyond my current understanding. The visions of the future, the scenes of peace and cooperation, all indicated that I had a role to play. My friendship with Sarah, the surgeon who saved my life, also deepened during this time. She became a confidant, someone with whom I could share my concerns. "Nate, it's normal to feel lost after such an intense experience," she said one night as we drank coffee in my kitchen. "But you're not alone. We're all here to support you." "Thank you, Sarah. This means a lot to me," I replied, feeling a rush of gratitude. Sometimes it feels like I'm living in two worlds at once. What happened there, in that marble hall, was as real as what we're experiencing now. "And perhaps it is," she said thoughtfully. "Science can't explain everything, and it may never do, but that doesn't mean it's not real." Sarah's words gave me a new perspective. I began to accept that my experience didn't need to be completely understood to be true. She simply was. Jack, my brother, continued to be my pillar of rationality. His skeptical outlook, although frustrating at times, helped me maintain a balance. "Nate, I know you believe what you saw," he said one day as we walked through the park, "but we need to keep our feet on the ground. We need hard evidence. I know, Jack, but some things can't be proven the conventional way, I replied. Still, I will do my best to understand and fulfill this mission. I trust you, brother, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder, and I will be by your side no matter what. As the date of July 20th, 2024 approached, my anxiety and anticipation grew. I began to observe the world around me more closely, looking for signs and clues about what was to come. Every piece of news, every event seemed potentially significant. My mind often returned to the marble hall and the spiritual guides. What exactly was the soul contract I needed to fulfill? And how would I know when and how to act? Nate, you'll find out when the time is right, Sarah said in one of our conversations. Trust the process and trust yourself. And so, I continued to prepare myself, physically and mentally, for whatever was coming. I felt that every little progress, every moment of reflection, brought me closer to my purpose. What kept me going was the certainty that I was not alone. My family, my friends, and even spiritual guides were all part of this journey. And as I waited for the fateful day, I knew that somehow everything would make sense in the end. There's something I forgot to tell you, something that happened a year after my near-death experience that was just as impactful. One night in July, exactly 1 year after the accident, I had an experience that further changed my perception of what was to come. That night, I was lying in my bed, ready to sleep. Lily was at my mother's house, staying the night, and the house was silent. As I prepared to fall asleep, I felt a strange sensation, as if my body was becoming weightless. Before I could understand what was happening, I felt my consciousness separating from my body. I looked down and saw my body lying on the bed, motionless. It was a surreal sight, but unlike the near-death experience, this time there was no fear, just curiosity. In the corner of the room, a bright light began to shine, growing in intensity until I could barely look directly at it. Suddenly, light took shape, and a familiar figure appeared. He was one of 5 guides I had met during the near-death experience. His presence was comforting and emanated a sense of wisdom and peace. Nathaniel, said the guide, his voice soft but charged with authority. I came to you to deliver an important message. I was stunned, not knowing what to expect. What do you need to tell me? I asked, my voice echoing in the room. A worldwide impact incident will occur close to the day the change begins, the guide said. This incident will be the sign you need to recognize that the time is near. However, I cannot reveal the exact nature of the incident, as doing so could alter the course of events. How will I know when that happens? I asked, worried. You will know, Nathaniel. When the moment comes, you will feel in your heart that this is the sign. Trust your intuition and the guides who will be by your side, replied the guide. Before I could ask any more questions, the guide's figure began to fade, and the light dimmed until it disappeared completely. Suddenly, I felt my consciousness being pulled back into my body, and I woke up with a start, lying in bed, breathing heavily. I spent the rest of the night reflecting on what had happened. I knew the guide's message was crucial, but I also knew I shouldn't share this information widely. I kept this secret with me, waiting for the right moment. As the months passed, I remained vigilant, watching for any signs that might indicate the beginning of change. Remembering the guide and his message gave me a new perspective, reinforcing my determination to fulfill my mission. I knew I was not alone, and that when the time came, I would be ready to act. This experience, like the first, reminded me of the magnitude of what was to come and the importance of my role in it all. And so, I continued my journey, prepared for what the future held. As I reflected on everything that had happened since the accident, I felt a deep sense of peace and purpose. The journey was just beginning, but I was ready. With my family and friends by my side, I knew I could face any challenge that came my way. The guide's message about a world-shattering incident and the sign it would represent was always on my mind. I knew that when the moment came, I would recognize the sign and be prepared to act. My life had changed drastically over the past 2 years, and each day brought me new understanding and new preparation for the mission that lay ahead. The date of July 20th, 2024 was quickly approaching, and I was more determined than ever to be ready for whatever came. For everyone listening to my story, I want to leave a message of hope and encouragement. No matter how extraordinary or challenging the experiences we face, there is always a greater purpose at play. Each of us has an important role to play, and together we can make a difference. Remember to trust your intuitions and the signs that life presents to you. Be open to possibilities and believe that you have the strength and courage to face any challenge. Never underestimate the power of unity and love. And finally, know that you are never alone. There is always a greater force guiding us, helping us find our path and fulfill our mission. May my story serve as a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is light and hope ahead of us. So, what did you think of this incredible story? Leave your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Activate the notification bell to be notified with each new video. Let's bring more people the hope that there is life beyond what the eyes can see.